I made a stink bomb and I threw it into our neighbor's garden. What is that smell? It stinks worse than your socks! I've been a prankster ever since I was a kid, and I loved trolling everyone. Of course, my parents suffered the most. While all the other girls were playing with dolls, I was turning our yard into a minefield. What did I do to deserve this? One day, I got my hands on a false mustache, and I immediately came up with a new prank idea. I lathered my face with Dad's shaving cream, and I took his razor. Oh God, are you shaving? I washed off the foam, and Mom saw me in all my glory. Oh, what's going on? It's nothing. Mom just saw my mustache and freaked out a bit.
This is Cassie?
Right. I forgot to introduce myself. Hi, my name is Cassie, and as you can see, I'm quite a troll. One day, my cousin Kevin came for a visit. He was a quiet and a shy boy. So in other words, a perfect victim. Kevin carried a teddy bear with him wherever he went. He even slept with it. Can you imagine? I found a similar toy and glued a scary smile and black button eyes to its face. One evening, I snuck into Kevin's room and replaced his teddy bear with my stuffed monster. My cousin went to bed, and soon, the whole street heard him scream. Sweetie, what happened? My teddy bear turned into a monster. Naturally, my parents immediately realized who was to blame. I was grounded for a whole week. Kevin went home the next morning. I think he even stuttered for a couple of more months after my prank. If you think that I'd grown up and changed, you're in for a disappointment. I stayed the same, but my pranks kept evolving. On the last day of school before the summer holidays, I caused mayhem at school like never before. First, I let the frogs in the science lab out of their cages. Then, I held a burning paper up to the smoke detector. It was pure chaos. I later found out that there were important visitors at our school that day. The principal got in trouble because of my prank. Moreover, one of my classmates had a phobia of frogs. When one of them jumped onto her backpack, she lost it. My parents were called to the school. They were beside themselves with anger. You crossed a line. You're not coming with us to the ocean. We're sending you to your cousin. What? That was a disaster! But they live in the middle of nowhere! I hope this will teach you a lesson. Naturally, I was sure this was gonna be a hellish summer. The last time Kevin and I had seen each other, he was pathetic. I didn't want to hang out with him, but no one cared about that. The town Kevin lived in was even worse than I'd feared. His parents drove me to their home, and on the way there, I only saw one cafe with a tilted sign. Had I time traveled into the last century? Their house was on the edge of town, next to a forest. When I got out of the car, I saw a woman. She was sitting on the terrace of the house next door, and she gave me a weird look. Her gaze sent a shiver down my spine. But then, I saw the guy who'd come out to greet us, and I forgot all about her. You're Cassie, right? No freaking way! Had my cousin grown up to be that handsome? Kevin? He was about to say something, but then we heard footsteps on the porch. A few seconds later, another guy came up to us. It was clear that that was Kevin. Hello, cuz. The handsome guy turned out to be Kevin's friend. His name was Fred. Kevin hadn't changed much, and the urge to make fun of him was way too strong to resist. How's your teddy bear doing? He's long since retired. Wow, Kevin had changed after all. He seemed much more confident. After I unpacked, Kevin and Fred invited me on a picnic. We headed into the forest. Some other kids were already waiting for us in a clearing. This is Bill. He's the biggest nerd in town. Oh, shut up, Kevin. And this is Alexia. It's nice to meet you. Yeah, likewise. We got along like a house on fire. When it started to get dark, the boys built a bonfire. We ate delicious food and played Uno. I really wanted to prank my new friends. I couldn't help it. So, I pretended to go gather branches for the fire, but actually, I turned on a music track on my phone and I hid it in the bushes. After I came back to the bonfire, we heard terrible howls coming from the bushes. What is that? Maybe it's just the wind. I could see that everyone was scared, but Fred plucked up the courage, searched the bushes, and came back with my phone. Holy mother of cows, Cassie! That almost gave me a heart attack. You know, this is just a prank, but terrible things really did happen in our town. Are you talking about that stupid legend again? What legend? Back in the 1980s, a girl called Caroline lived here. She was bullied because of her unusual appearance. She was an albino. One day, someone went too far when they pranked her. Caroline ran off into the woods in tears, and she never came back. Later, she was found in a forest lake.
She drowned. The lake's been cursed ever since. Everyone who swims in it disappears without a trace within a day.
Bill stopped talking, and all we could hear was the crackling of the bonfire and the hooting of an owl.
That story gives me the creeps every time.
Come on, it's just an urban horror story.
Exactly. Parents tell it to their children so they won't play in the woods. Let's go for a swim in that lake then. It's not far from here.
At first, no one supported Fred's idea. No one wanted to leave the bonfire and wander through the forest at night. But I loved the idea of going on an adventure, and I convinced everyone to join me. We turned on the flashlights on our phones and headed toward the lake.
Well, who's gonna get in first? Maybe Bill? Why me? Why, are you scared? No, I'm not afraid of anything.
I didn't expect it to work, but Bill got into the water first. Alexia and Kevin followed him, then Fred, and finally me. The water was freezing and we quickly swam back to shore. Then we sat around the bonfire a little bit longer and went home. I was woken up by a strange sound. It was like someone was scratching the window with nails. I looked out the window and saw a blurry white silhouette behind it. It was still dark outside. My blood ran cold, but the next second, the silhouette disappeared. Ugh, was I seeing things? The next day, I stayed at home, but in the evening, Kevin asked if I wanted to hang out with him and his friends again. We came to the same cafe that I'd seen from the car window. Everything here looks so ancient.
That's the retro style, baby. Where's Bill? I haven't been able to reach him all day. That's unlike him. What was that? It must be problems with the wiring again. When will the electrician finally get here?
We were all pretty spooked because of Bill, and we called him again. At first, no one answered, and then we were told the number was unavailable. Kevin suggested that we go to Bill's house. When we arrived, his parents said they'd never seen him come back home.
He's never run away from home before. If Bill doesn't come back tomorrow, we're going to the police.
Even though I'd only known Bill for about a day, I was still worried about him. Kevin and I went back home in a terrible mood. We were almost there when I noticed our neighbor giving me a weird look again. Who is that?
Mrs. Brown. She works at a local school.
Why was she looking at me like that? The next morning, Kevin's parents left for a few days. The house was ours. In the morning, we went for a walk in the forest, and then, what's that in the grass?
It's Bill's phone!
We immediately brought it to his parents.
Bill hasn't come back yet. We've already contacted the police.
Soon, our gang came back to the cafe again.
It's terrible. Guys, I think... What? I think Caroline took Bill. He was the first one to step into the lake, right?
Oh, you can't be serious. Caroline isn't real.
But then, where is Bill?
Kevin suggested we go to the cinema to get our mind off things. The cinema turned out to be just as vintage as the cafe. I got a seat next to Fred's. At some point, our eyes met. To my delight, he covered my hand with his and smiled slightly. Oh, I felt myself blush. Since I liked Fred, I didn't pull my hand away. After the movie, he asked if I wanted to go for a walk with him. We wandered through the city and chatted.
You're not like other girls.
Should I take that as a compliment or an insult? Fred suddenly stopped and looked into my eyes.
What do you think?
It was extremely flattering, but his gaze was too intense for me, and I turned away. Will you walk me home? Fred and I had almost reached Kevin's house when we saw a white silhouette near the forest. I'd already seen it before outside my window. As we got closer, I realized it was a girl with snow-white hair and pale skin. A dense fog surrounded her.
Do you see that?
Alexia's words immediately came to mind.
I think Caroline took Bill.
I shook my head, trying to get rid of foolish thoughts like that. But when Fred and I walked into the forest, the girl was no longer there. The next morning, Kevin woke me up. He sounded nervous.
Hey, wake up!
What are you barging in here so early for?
Alexia's missing!
Hearing that made me jump out of bed instantly. What the heck?
Her parents just called. She never came home last night.
My stomach was in knots. Kevin, Fred, and I went to the police station to find out the details.
Cassie, wait here. We'll try and find out what happened.
When the boys returned, they said that the police had practically no leads. Their only clue was Bill's phone that we'd found.
Could Alexia be right about Caroline?
Are you kidding me?
Hear me out. It makes sense if you think about it. Bill swam in the lake first, right? Alexia went after him. By that logic, I'm supposed to go missing next.
This is nonsense. I said that, but deep down, I was uneasy.
Remember the white silhouette we saw near the forest yesterday? How do you explain that?
Are any movies being filmed here?
What? You think some crew's been kidnapping teenagers?
In the end, we decided that Fred would spend the night at our place. We put all our sleeping bags in the living room, but we couldn't fall asleep for a long time. To be honest, I was scared. Eventually, I dozed off. but then someone shook me by the shoulder.
Cassie, get up. Kevin is missing.
We ran outside and we started calling for him, but my cousin was nowhere to be found. My heart sank. I started to tremble and I hugged myself.
Look over there.
Kevin pointed at the forest, and I saw the white-haired girl again. She was holding Kevin's hand and leading him into the forest. Kevin! I ran after them, but I slipped and fell. Fred helped me up, but by the time we reached the woods, there was only fog. Kevin!
Dude, this is not funny.
I wished I was stuck in a nightmare, but this was all too real. Fred put an arm around my shoulders and led me back into the house. The next morning, I called Kevin and his parents, but none of them answered. Should we go to the police?
They won't help us. If Caroline is real, we need to stop her ourselves.
I didn't believe in horror stories, but I didn't have any better ideas. So Fred and I went to the library and looked through the city archive.
There's supposed to be information about all the city residents here.
We stayed in the library for hours, but we didn't find anything useful. Fred stayed at my place again that night. When we came home, we got takeout and turned on a comedy. Fred tried to cheer me up, and it worked. Soon, I felt better, but then...
Don't worry, it's just an electrical issue.
Fred pulled me closer and put my head on his shoulder.
I won't let anyone hurt you.
I felt protected. We decided to stay up all night, but I ended up falling asleep again. For the first time in the past few days, I managed to get a good night of sleep. When I woke up in the morning, I stretched and... Where was Fred? My heart started racing. Fred? Where are you? I ran out into the yard in a panic, and I called out again. Fred didn't appear, and he didn't answer his phone either. Had he gone home? I didn't know his address, so I couldn't check. Anyway, Fred wouldn't have done that to me. I didn't know what to do. But then, Mrs. Brown called my name. She waved at me from the terrace.
Are you all right?
I doubted that she'd be able to help, but I really needed someone to talk to. So I told her about everything that happened.
I knew Caroline years ago. The other kids constantly bullied and pranked her. Caroline suffered a lot. One day, she went into the woods and she didn't come back.
Are you saying the legend's real?
All legends are based on some level of reality. I think you should go to the lake and apologize to Caroline on behalf of everyone who hurt her. Maybe your friends will come back then.
I didn't believe it would work, but I decided to still give it a try. At least that way, I'd be doing something. Mrs. Brown came along. When we arrived at the lake, I looked at the water. I did feel sorry for Caroline. It suddenly occurred to me that she'd been bullied by kids like me. I never thought about people's feelings when I pranked them. My parents, my neighbors, that one classmate with the phobia of frogs. I'm sorry, Caroline, and everyone else too. I'm truly sorry. All of a sudden, a white fog appeared on the other shore. Gradually, the outlines of a figure became visible in it. It was Caroline. My breath caught in my throat. Had my plan worked? Caroline took a step forward and smiled. I forgive. She suddenly staggered and fell. Dang it, I couldn't see anything. Stupid fog machine. Hold on a second. Was she a real person and not a ghost?
You ruined the dramatic ending.
I could only stare as Kevin, Fred, Alexia, and Bill stepped out of the fog. It turned out everything had been staged from beginning to end. What an elaborate prank.
I hadn't forgotten how you scared me when we were kids, so I decided to return the favor. Lately, I've been interested in organizing quests. I'm constantly coming up with new stories. When I found out you were gonna be staying with us, I decided I'd teach you a lesson and ask my friends for help.
I was lost for words. So they'd been pretending the whole time? I'd been worried for nothing? You freaking...
Don't be mad at them, Cassie. I'm a school psychologist, and I've been making sure they didn't go too far. Now, you've felt the same as your victims, and you realized you need to think about other people's feelings. Isn't that right?
I wanted to say no, but that would have been a lie. Of course, I was furious, but I quickly calmed down. Now that I thought about it, this was kind of an awesome prank. That evening, we went to a cafe and laughed about the past few days.
The hardest part of the whole plan was trying to convince my parents to play along. It wasn't easy to pretend that we'd talk to cops either.
I had to pretend to be a ghost. It was great. You really made me buy it. The only one that I didn't want to talk to was Fred. That whole time, he had seemed caring, but he'd really just been playing a role. The lights flickering and the fog, they were all his doing. Apparently, he was great at making special effects. Soon, I came back to my hometown and I used the power of my imagination for good. Like Kevin, I grew interested in quests. We often called each other and discussed new ideas. My quests were soon the best in town. Mom and Dad were finally proud of me. Unfortunately, I couldn't hang out with Kevin and his friends because I couldn't get over Fred. Until one day,
Kevin gave me your address. I thought flowers might be a little corny for a girl like you. Can we start over?
I stared at the bouquet of chocolate frogs and I could hardly hold back a smile. Okay, come on in. Just don't mess with the lights again.